Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a presentation of SEC Extra at D1Baseball.com. Your host, as always, Joe Healy, here to recap Friday's action around the league, take a look at Saturday's games, wrapping up the weekend of SEC baseball. Today is the last day of the weekend for SEC games. Obviously, quick turnaround to the SEC tournament on Tuesday, so trying to wrap things up. Teams that are on the road in the South, if you're an SEC East team that's a little further south, sometimes you stay out on the road, just go straight to Hoover. So it's kind of a wonky week for everyone, regardless of where you're playing. So quick turnaround there. And that reminds me to remind you, but our SEC tournament preview live stream, Monday, May 20th, that's here in 2 days' time, believe it or not. It's 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Central. Mark Etheridge and I are going to do a special edition, live edition of Highway to Hoover to preview the SEC tournament, with an emphasis, of course, on those Tuesday games that will go first. And also, we're going to do some Q&A. So if you're going to join us live, come ready with some questions. Hope to have some special guests along the way, still nailing all that down, but that maybe could help us with a little Q&A. So bring some questions to have answered, questions about the tournament, questions about Field of 64 stuff, questions about off-season stuff, roster construction stuff. If your team's not in the SEC tournament, we'll talk a little bit about what happened. There's all kinds of things we could talk about. Also some nonsense, frankly. I'm in for nonsense questions as well, so don't be shy about those. But anyway, wherever you're watching this, you can watch the live stream of the SEC tournament preview, so you don't need to do anything different than you normally do to watch this show. There will also be a recording, as there is with this show. There'll be a recording of the tournament preview available to you after the fact, so you won't have to learn anything new or do anything different or anything. However you watch this, you can watch that. All right, let's got a couple comments waiting here. James Gillum on YouTube says, Joe, South Carolina bleeding out over here. Yeah, it kind of feels like that. A couple things on South Carolina first before we jump in. A substantive thing right off the bat. So shouts to James for taking us there. I felt like yesterday, Garrett Gainey threw the ball really well for 5 innings, and I get being greedy there. Like, South Carolina's had enough issues with their bullpen that you kind of have to be greedy with Gainey, because his pitch count was pretty low too. It's not like he was laboring through 5 innings and just avoiding trouble. Like, he was pretty dominant, but he just kind of hit a wall. Tennessee takes the lead and then kind of boat races them the rest of the way. It felt like yesterday was the chance for South Carolina. Now, who knows? They come out today, and today's a different day, and things happen. But South Carolina really needs that 14th win. And I want to clarify, because I had a South Carolina fan message me on social media on X last week, and he made a good point. He says, why, we talk so much about getting to the 13th win. We've talked about it with Florida, with Alabama, with LSU and Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and yet South Carolina already has 13 wins, but they get lumped in. They get lumped in as a bubble team, right? So, like, why are they being talked about differently? And it's a great point. And if I made it sound like they're totally just on the same footing, then that was me doing a poor job of kind of clarifying myself there. But sitting on 13 like South Carolina is, they're already in the conversation. They've been in the conversation for weeks. They're gonna be on the committee sheet as a team at the very worst, on the outskirts of the right side of the bubble. But my bigger point with South Carolina is that the committee is made up of humans. And let's say South Carolina loses today. That's 6 straight SEC losses or sweeps in the last 2 weekends. That can be a tough mental thing to overcome. Now, let's see what they do in Hoover, right? I mean, a couple wins in Hoover could do wonders, and they're probably in then. And I see Jay Seitler on X says, are the Gamecocks ever going to win again, Joe? That they might have to, right? If they do nothing else, they could get in. So my larger point with the Gamecocks that I maybe didn't do a great job of explaining on previous episodes was that, like, you're leaving a lot to the committee, especially if teams today, if Alabama gets a 13th win, and Alabama has, or at least has typically had a better RPI. Let me update the RPIs here. I haven't looked at them yet today. Alabama's fallen a little bit, actually. They're at 17. So, but regardless, you they were at like 11. Alabama was. So you start to, if Alabama gets to 13, if Vanderbilt gets 13, if all these teams get to 13, suddenly now you're you just have this like glut of teams that are all in that same boat, right? And so then the committee has to find a way to split them, right? Because maybe they all get in, maybe they all miss. More likely, some get in, some don't. So the committee's got to stack them up. And if you're South Carolina and you're limping in with 13 wins, you got swept in your last 2 weekends. Again, we're assuming a loss today, which of course might not happen. South Carolina might win. It changes this whole conversation. But the committee's got to find a way to draw differences between the teams. So if South Carolina comes in limping like that, that's just a tough thing for a committee made up of humans to get out of their brains. So that's all I'm saying with South Carolina is that if you sit on 13 and you just kind of back your way in, that might be a little bit hard to overcome. It might be something that the committee uses as a way to draw a line between it and the other teams that have 13 wins. But a win today or a win in Hoover would do wonders. We probably aren't even having a conversation about them if they can do that, and they'll be in as a 2 seed, and they'll be a dangerous 2 seed, right? Because they're not untalented. They have good wins this year. Like it's not like they're a team that could make a lot of noise when they get sent to NC State or East Carolina or whoever it is they end up in the regional of. A lot of comments today already. I love it. I will get through them as quickly as I can. I'll tell you what. I'll come back to the Liz V on YouTube says Gainey's last pitch was 94. Yeah, that's so yeah, his stuff was good. They just eventually got to him. I'll set those comments aside. We'll continue on with the show, and then I'll circle back to comments here in just a little bit. The game of the day was Florida 7, UGA 4 in 10 innings. Couple options here. The Auburn-Alabama game was wild, but in a different way. Auburn was blowing Alabama out, and then Alabama made a crazy comeback that fell just short. So that could have been the selection as well, but went Florida 7, Georgia 4 in 10 innings. A few reasons. One, it was a good pitching battle. I had a lot of fun watching that. It was an early game, so it was kind of it, along with the Ole Miss LSU game, kind of allowed me to pay a little more attention to those individual games. But really good pitching matchup. Liam Peterson, second. His line, he pitched better than what his line shows. Second week in a row, Liam Peterson's been really good. Maybe a little too late on getting him to that point. Maybe if this is not putting it on him, this is just the reality. If he was pitching like this 3 or 4 weeks earlier, Florida might not be in this predicament. And as it is, he looks like a guy who might go in next year being Florida's Friday guy. I mean, he's really, really talented and now seems to be putting it together. But Leighton Finley on the other side for Georgia was just as good, if not better. So really good pitching matchup there. Florida, the difference for Florida is they got to Brian Zeldin. Brian Zeldin has been a really good bullpen piece this year for Georgia. They've had some other bullpen guys step up, so it's made it a little easier. But I think the result of how good Zeldin has been is that he's been a little overexposed. They've used him a lot. He's had a lot of outings where he's throwing 50 plus pitches. And so there's a lot of tape on him. A lot of guys have seen him. We're in week 14. There's really not a lot of secrets in conference. And that was the difference. Florida got to Zeldin, jumps out. Georgia ends up pulling it back to take, they end up, Florida catches up. They end up in extra innings. Luke Heyman 3-run home run in that 10th inning was the difference. A big swing there from a guy that Florida obviously really needs and has been swinging it better as of late. So it sets up, it sets up a big rubber match for today, which we will talk about here in just a little bit. Going back to the comments here, let's see, where did I leave off here? All Vols Ball, it's hard to say, on YouTube says Tennessee on top. We'll see. Kentucky yesterday clinched a share of the SEC title with the Kentucky loss today and a Tennessee win. Tennessee would tie them, and Tennessee would have the tiebreaker, of course, because they won that series in Lexington. So they would be the number 1 seed at the SEC tournament and would be effectively the SEC champs. Although I think officially the SEC calls them co-champs. I have to maybe get clarification on that, but regardless, Kentucky lost, Tennessee win. Tennessee will be the number 1 seed in the tournament and will again effectively be the SEC champs. Caleb Tyndall on YouTube. Thoughts on SEC Player of the Year race? Should Condon get the nod for overall performance or more for performance in SEC games? It's an interesting debate because, what Christian Moore's doing in SEC play is crazy, just how effective he's been. But let me pull up conference-only stats real quick. Yeah, so Christian Moore batting .434 in conference games. His 20 home runs in conference play lead the conference in that period of time. Condon, for comparison, is hitting .407 in conference games with 18 home runs. I think what I would vote and what will happen is the same. I would still go Condon. When we're talking about a historically excellent season, something that we haven't seen in a long time in terms of power production, and also being the pure hitter that he is. I think I'd go Condon at this point, but Christian Moore's done a great job putting himself in that conversation with what he's done in SEC play. And if non-conference games weren't more than half or roughly half of the schedule, maybe I'd feel differently. But you play a 56 game schedule, 30 of them are conference games, so 26 at least on paper without cancellations and what have you. Almost half of them are non-conference games. So I just generally, while I can certainly appreciate what Christian Moore is doing in SEC play, I just don't know that I feel comfortable being in a situation where we de-emphasize the 26 other games. And I think that's just the reality of the college baseball schedule. But a really good question, Caleb, because I think it does deserve attention and he's getting plenty of it, but but it does deserve calling out that Christian Moore has been otherworldly in SEC play. But I think Condon's still the player to beat here. Jason Armstrong on YouTube. If LSU finishes 13-17 and lacks RPI in head-to-head, does the way they ended matter? Vandy would have ended 2-9 the last 11 SEC games. Florida losers of 6 of the last 7 series. South Carolina on 6-game losing streak. Yeah, I think it could be a factor. It is not officially, I don't believe, something the committee considers. Like they have certain metrics that they consider, right? Like RPI is the official metric. That is a consideration. KPI, which was introduced this year, and if you're a college basketball fan, you're familiar with, will be available as a data point. However, it is not an official metric. Now, you might be asking, Joe, how do you use something as a data point and not make it a de facto official metric because you're going to put teams in or out based on that metric? And I would say, good question. And I don't know. And I asked around a lot about that when they announced at the ABCA convention in January, they were going to be using KPI this way. How do you make data available to someone and tell them like, yeah, you can look at it and you can consider it, but it's not an official metric? Well, what does that mean? Like, what? Okay. Like, anyway, I don't need to get on that soapbox, but I do think how you finish unofficially matters, though, because again, these are humans with eyeballs, right? I mean, they're going to watch some of these teams. We talked about South Carolina at the top of the show. Florida and Vanderbilt also not playing well. LSU playing better, winning series late in the year. I do think that matters just from almost like a subconscious standpoint of the perception of like, hey, LSU is playing better right now. They're a better team right now than those 3 others. So yeah, Jason, I think it does matter. How much it matters, we'll see. That's what's fun from my standpoint, because I'm a neutral observer and it makes it tough to guess. But from a fan standpoint, I totally understand how it's maddening that the committee kind of seems year after year, it seems to value different things differently. So we'll see about that. All Vols Ball came back, said not just Tennessee bias, but Moore has been killing during SEC play, not padding his stats against non-con. That's fair. Yeah, I talked about that. I still would like Condon in the SEC Player of the Year race, but yeah, nobody's been better in conference play than Christian Moore. There's no doubt about that. Jeremy Scott on Facebook, a little long here, so I'll put it on the screen. Roll Tide, 2 tough losses, though probably should have won at least one of the first 2 games, and weather permitting, hopefully they'll avoid the sweep and not play themselves out of a regional. Also, weird things continue to happen when they play at the Plains, regardless of sport. Isn't that true? Yeah. Games, Alabama-Auburn games at Auburn, notoriously weird in various sports. Yeah, weather, another factor today. As I look out my window here, pretty gray. So yeah, that's going to be a thing. But again, I expect them to get that game in. I think it's a network game because it starts later in the day than everything else, like 6 Eastern, I believe. So I think they'll find a way. But yeah, big game for Alabama. All kinds of big games on the schedule today because we've got however many teams. I should have pulled up the conference standings here so I could have it. But I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 teams sitting on 12 and South Carolina sitting on 13. So yeah, a lot at stake in this regular season finale. Vis-a-vis 16, as an Arkansas fan, kind of wish they could skip today's game and maybe only play one game during the SEC tournament. And vis-a-vis, you have hit on one of the reasons why there was so much support for in 2025 and beyond inviting all 16 SEC teams and doing single elimination. Because what happens is if there will be a team, one of, let me just put it this way and use this example. One of Ole Miss or LSU will not have enough. Well, that's not a bad example because if LSU wins, Ole Miss won't get to 12. Regardless, I won't use a real example. I'll just give you the hypothetical. If you go to the SEC tournament with 12 wins and you need another one, at least one, okay, like you just know, hey, we're gonna have to play well this week. We might be here a while. We're gonna have to fight through it. But let's say you're Georgia, and there's a pretty decent chance that you're hosting at this point. If you win today to sweep, maybe you're a national seed, but you're certainly already hosting. But you're going to be in those Tuesday games. So you win a Tuesday game, like maybe that helps you be a national seed. Maybe it doesn't though, because Georgia's going to be playing against one of the last couple of teams in the SEC tournament field. So it's not like it's going to be a win against A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, wins that could be viewed as game changers. But so you win that Tuesday game. Well, now all of a sudden you're guaranteed to play at least 2 more. And so now you're there till the end of the week. And it shortens your recovery time ahead of regionals. So yeah, I think if you're a team of one of those fan of one of those top 4 teams, I guess at least you don't have to play on Tuesday, but there is kind of the balance of, I can't remember which coach said it last year. I wish I could remember because it was put so well of, we want to win here, but not at all costs. And I think that's exactly the right attitude. Like no competitor goes into a game thinking like, yeah, it's fine if we lose. But you do also have to understand the bigger picture. And if you're one of the top half SEC teams, you understand the bigger picture of trying to get to Omaha. Swanky Masterball on X. He's asking about Oregon State. Swanky, this is an SEC focused show. I appreciate you watching though. So I will answer your question. He says the Beavs RPI looking good. Well, let's see. Where are the Beavs? Yeah, they're at 11. They've crushed Arizona the last 2 days. Certainly if you sweep them, they're certainly going to host. You might need to win the Pac-12 tournament to be a top 8. So that's my 2 cents there on Oregon State. I appreciate you listening, even if this is an SEC focused show. William Bentley, KPI loves LSU at 24. Yeah, that's part of the why I want more official metrics. Is it allows you to throw out outliers, right? College basketball, at least the men, use like 5 different metrics, and so if you've got one that's way out of touch with the others, you can just throw that out and say, well, clearly these other 4 that are a lot closer to each other tell the real story. This one's the outlier. We toss it out. By using primarily RPI, we don't know which ones are outliers, because we don't have the data comparison. At least now we have the data comparison with KPI. And so I'm interested to see in the call with the committee chairman after the selection show, how often does KPI come up in conversation? Or does it kind of get waved away as like, well, it was just like a supplementary piece. If we needed to break a tie, we looked at KPI, stuff like that. I'll kind of be fascinated to see, because I think it can give us some clues as to what the committee thinks about needing to expand to more data points, which I would be in favor of. LSU, Landon Lewis on YouTube. LSU will break the defending champ curse of missing the tournament. With the way they're playing right now, yeah, it looks that way. Certainly. They've already broken the curse of missing the SEC tournament, which I know is not the goal, but State and Ole Miss immediately after winning a national title didn't even get to Hoover. So they've already done better. But yeah, playing the way they are, it looks like they could be in regionals. Swanky comes back on X. How do you feel about SEC teams that have to go out west? How tough would it be to go play in a regional at Corvallis or UCSB? Tough for reasons beyond the teams. Now, I think those are both good teams, Oregon State and Santa Barbara. If there's an SEC fan out there sticking their nose up at those teams, like you might have another thing coming. Those are two of the more talented teams on the West Coast. There's a reason they're in hosting conversation. Obviously, at Oregon State, you have to deal with Travis Bazzana, who, if you've not watched him, that dude is a player, really good player. So he would be someone you had to deal with. Corvallis, also a tough environment. It is one of the only West Coast places I've been told. I've not been there. I would love to go at some point. I've been told that Corvallis is one of the only atmospheres on the West Coast that rivals a good SEC atmosphere when that place is really rocking. They love their college baseball there. UCSB, I mean, less so the atmosphere, but a very talented team. Also low-key kind of hard to get to UCSB. Like, Santa Barbara it's not like you can just fly into, the LAX or Orange County Airport and you're there in 15 minutes. Like, no, it's a little bit of a trek. Also think about the body clock piece of it. Anybody who's ever done the East Coast to West Coast, if you're let's say they decide to ship South Carolina out to the West Coast, I mean, that's a pretty significant time zone change. Anybody who's ever made that trip, it does mess with your body a little bit. So that there is that challenge as well. Nicholas Doherty, is there a world where Vandy misses the tourney? Absolutely there is. They're not locked into anything right now. Sitting on 12 SEC wins. RPI is good, 32. RPI is really not an issue for any of these teams we're talking about. But yeah, if they get swept today, they're certainly in trouble. And even if they get to 13 with a win today, it'll come down to A, what do you do in Hoover? And B, how do you stack up against the other, not just the other SEC bubble teams, but the rest of the bubble, right? How do you compare to South Carolina? How do you which that one won't go great for Vanderbilt because South Carolina swept you. How do you compare to Alabama? How do you compare to Ole Miss or LSU, et cetera, et cetera? And that's just a tough place to be. So yeah, if you're Vanderbilt, you need a win today, and you need to play well at Hoover. You need to win that opening game to feel good about it. Otherwise, you're going to be sweating out the selection show. Hey UF Girl on X says, "Go Luke, go Gators." That is a shout out for Luke Heyman with his 3-run homer. Joey on YouTube, Vols need Vandy boys to magically lock in for another game 3. Yep. Tennessee in the weird position of, like I said yesterday, of having to root for Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt so far has not been helpful to Tennessee. So yeah, Landon Lewis. Oh, this is just a kudos. I started reading this before I saw what it was. Appreciate what you've done this season. You and Mark do good work. Thank you, Landon. I appreciate you and everyone else for following along. A lot of good stuff still ahead. Best part of the year. William Bentley, Vanderbilt is 6-16 against quad 1 with a bad non-conference strength of schedule. If they lose out, they can miss. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's that. Yeah, exactly. I think that was in response to the comment about can Vandy miss the tourney. Bryant Lane on Facebook, Woo Pig Suey. Yeah, big win last night. Fun one to watch. Big rubber game there. Less on the line for those two teams. We kind of know what those two teams are, but should be a fun game regardless. LSU, I think, is 16-18 versus quad 1 teams, Landon says. Let's fact check. Not that I doubt you, Landon, but let's I'm showing maybe quad 1 and quad 2 is what you're combining there. Yeah, so against the first two quadrants, they are 17-18, which is good. That's a good record against. That doesn't sound like much, but that is a good record, certainly for a bubble team. All Vols ball. Do you think Tennessee is on par or better hitters than the 22 run? I feel like we have a more well-rounded lineup. I had the same conversation with Ben McKee a few weeks ago on my podcast, Highway to Hoover. So go back and listen to that if you haven't listened to it there. I think this lineup is deeper than star power. I think we could have that debate. But I do think this lineup is deeper. I mean, they've got guys on the bench. I mean, I think about a guy, like Reese Chapman hasn't been in the lineup every day, right? Hunter Inslee is a guy who almost feels like an extra piece in this lineup, kind of a forgotten man, and he's on the list of potential players of the day from yesterday. Like he's just had a really good season. I'm forgetting names, so I'm going to go to their stat page real quick so I can give the correct shout outs. But yeah, Colby Backus, like, dude has started 5 games this year. He's only got 29 at bats, but he has 5 bombs. Like, that's a guy who would be starting in a lot of other lineups. Even guys who aren't playing as much now. Robin Villeneuve was really hot to start the season, and you need guys like that. Like, he helped them win a lot of games early on, even if he's not swinging it as well now. And then you have a guy like Cannon Peebles who is swinging it a little better now, right? Struggle for early in the year. Now he's swinging it a little bit better. That's kind of what you need to have happen. I mean, look at Florida. They've had really just the same group of guys all season, and they've been very susceptible to, like, ups and downs, which it makes it to where, like, if you've got 3 guys slumping, it makes it really hard, whereas Tennessee is able to play matchups a little bit better. I say his comment here says the pitching was definitely better in 22, in my opinion. I agree with that. I mean, you had Dolander and Burns and Beam all together. So certainly there. All right. Let's see. Will Stafford, this is good information here. Having worked in an SEC athletic department and know how awards are voted on, the SEC only sends SEC stats with ballots for the rest of the league to vote on players. So good information from Will there. So yeah, maybe Christian Moore is more of a contender there if the voters want to go that way. And look, I'm not going to be mad if they go that way. I mean, he's a deserving player. I do think just the fact that we've looked at Charlie Condon as this, like, otherworldly season and a player all on his own planet, whether that's true or not. And I think Christian Moore's numbers say that's not exactly true, but I do think that's probably the way the voting goes. Tanner Harris, good morning to the Arkansas offense. Yeah, they played pretty well. William Bentley, the committee will screw up enough without inadmissible evidence. That's funny. James Kelly on YouTube, big day today, not only for teams to try and get to 13 wins, but as well as seeding for SEC tournament for teams that might need to win a game. Will want to try to avoid playing Georgia and State. That's totally true. That's the other thing, is you've got these teams that are good that are going to have to play on opening day, teams that are probably hosting, like Georgia and State. So yeah, if you're a team that needs wins in Hoover, you need to get out of those games because winning games against those two is going to be tough. Jasper Poag, if LSU win today, Poag or Pogue, and win 1 or 2 in the SEC tournament, they're in. I would think so. He also says Ole Miss is donezo. With a loss today, Ole Miss would have a lot of work to do in Hoover. A lot of work to do. Jeremy Scott says, "I'll be in Hoover for the SEC tournament. Maybe I'll see you." Yes, by all means. If you see me out running around in Hoover, because I do, just because of their setup there, I do spend a decent amount of time, like, walking around the concourse, because to go, sometimes to get food or to get down to the press conference areas, like, I will be in the concourse and what have you. So yeah, if you see me, feel free to say hi. Don't be shy about that. Happy to meet you guys if you're going to be there. Now, I may say, hey, I'm going to a press conference. Can you wait a second? If I'm hurrying somewhere, but certainly I will be able to at least say hi, give you a little wave. But if I've got time, I'd love to chat up a little bit. So yeah, find me. Joe, do you have all the tiebreakers for when we have 5 13-win teams, which is possible? I do not, James. I'm sure those are available. Maybe I'll retweet those and find them. I know they're out there. I will get those. Tucker Medlin, do you think State has to win today, or have they already done enough to guarantee a host spot? Well, let's look. Gosh, that's tough. If their RPI was 5 spots higher, I'd say yeah. I do worry from State's standpoint that the RPI that's closer to 20 than it is to 15 or 16 is going to be a problem. That's my worry from State's standpoint. 17 wins should do it. I mean, if you win today, if you win 18 SEC games, and your RPI is in the top 20, like, I don't really care what the RPI, like, if their RPI is that much different than the others, but 17 feels kind of like you need to get off 17 as a number, whether that's winning today, winning a game or 2 in Hoover. But again, if they were just a few spots higher in RPI, because the committee has shown they're going to lean heavily on RPI. They always do. I hate it. It's whatever. I'd feel better about it. But yeah, you win today. I think 18 SEC wins. It's not like their RPI is 35. I mean, their RPI will be 18 or 19 or something. I think that'll be enough. That's just my opinion, though. We'll have to see how it all plays out. Let's okay, Swanky's back with another question. Do you think Charlie Condon will go number 1 overall in the draft? Is he really a third baseman in your opinion? Yes and yes. I mean, if I'm choosing now, I think Charlie Condon's my pick. I also think he's a third baseman. Now, a team might decide otherwise, but he's not a stiff over there. Like when I saw him against South Carolina a couple weekends ago, like he made some really nice plays coming in. It's an accurate arm. I'd have to get a better look at him to really break it down, but it looked like maybe his release could be improved, like the quickness of it. But it's plenty of arm strength, plenty of good movement coming in. He's a good athlete. I think last year I thought he was maybe not a great athlete, but I've seen this year that, I mean, the dude's an athlete. So I think he'll go out into pro ball. Yeah, 6'6". So he says, yeah, he's a tall drink of water, and that's why I thought he was kind of maybe unathletic. He looked like he was like a long mover, long limbs, but he's pretty athletic for that size. William Bentley says NC State entering the hosting discussion has complicated things. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like NC State just won a series against Wake. They could sweep it today, although I don't know. That game will be happening like 10 minutes from where I'm standing right now, and the weather doesn't look great. So yeah, that has complicated things because NC State now kind of in that discussion when they weren't necessarily before. So that's another team State will be kind of having to be balanced against. Yes, Liz says State has a problem they are finishing with Missouri. That actually cost them RPI points stepping on the field. Yeah, I mean, Missouri is the one team, and their RPI is not even terrible relative to what other conferences have to deal with. But yeah, they're 108 in RPI. So yeah, that's the team when you're playing them at home, especially. You're not going to get as much help. Swinky compares Condon to Alec Boehm. Yeah, I'm not great at the comp game because I'm not a scout, but that feels about right. Obviously, Condon a much better player, but that feels like a reasonable comp there. All right, we are 32 minutes in, so Joe is gonna hustle through some of this stuff. So that I'm glad you're enjoying it and glad you're asking a lot of great questions. I love answering them, but we'll speed through some of this stuff. Player of the day yesterday, candidates. Peyton Stovall, 3 for 4 in that Arkansas win over Texas A&M. Hudson White, 2 for 3 with a home run and 3 runs batted in. Big home run there for Hudson White. He continues to, at least by batting average, be Arkansas's best guy in SEC play. Slow start, playing a lot better now, showing some pop. We knew it was in there, and now he seems to be coming around on it. For Florida, in that win over Georgia, Cags 3 for 4 with a double and a walk. Michael Robertson 3 for 5 with a double. In a losing effort in that game, Corey Collins 3 for 5 with a double and 2 home runs. In LSU's win over Ole Miss, Tommy White 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and a home run. In Mississippi State's win over Mizzou, that was pretty comprehensive. Amani Larry 3 for 4 with 2 home runs, 4 runs batted in. Big game for him. Dakota Jordan also 3 for 4 with 2 doubles. Vanderbilt in a losing effort against Kentucky, Jonathan Vestine, 3 for 5, 2 doubles. Matthew Polk, 3 for 4. In the South Carolina-Tennessee game, Cole Messina goes 3 for 4 for South Carolina. Christian Moore for Tennessee extends his breaks his own record of all-time and single season at Tennessee in home runs. He went 3 for 4 with a homer. Hunter Inslee, 2 for 3 with a home run, a walk, and 3 runs batted in. That Alabama-Auburn game, a wild game. Auburn scored a bunch early. Alabama scored a bunch late. Auburn wins at 12-11. Gage Miller, 3 for 6 with a double. Will Hamiter, 3 for 4 with 2 doubles, a walk, 5 runs batted in. On the Auburn side, Carter Wright, 3 for 4 with a double, 4 runs batted in. Derek Fabian, 3 for 3 with 2 doubles and 2 walks, so got on base 5 times. For Kentucky, Nolan McCarthy, 2 for 3, 2 hit by pitches, so reached 4 times, 3 runs batted in. Nick Lopez, 2 for 3 with 2 walks, also got on base 4 times. But the player of the day is Ryan Waldschmidt, 4 for 4 with a double and a home run. Took Carter Holton's first pitch of the game out to left field. It was a sign of things to come for Carter Holton, who was not good yesterday. I said on this show about this time yesterday that if Vanderbilt's going to win this, this is Vanderbilt's best chance to win a game in this series, I think, if Carter Holton goes out and really throws the ball well. He was visited by the trainer in the first inning, although he did continue to pitch. He gave up back-to-back home runs to start the game. Got an out, then loaded the bases and was removed. So we faced 6 batters, got 1 out. All of his inherited runners scored. A little bit of tough luck there, but just not a good outing for Carter Holton. And certainly if Vanderbilt's going to be in a regional, if they make it, they're going to need him to be better. So you worry a little bit about that. And what, was the trainer visit nothing? Was it something? Maybe we'll find out in the coming days. Pitcher of the day, quickly. Leighton Finley, mentioned him earlier. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 run, struck out 8. Brandon Neely in relief in that same game. 4 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 1 run. Much needed performance there. Georgia obviously needs him to be the Brandon Neely of last season if they're going to get into a regional. And then once they're there, Luke Holman for LSU, 6 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts. Jerangelo Senja, 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. Drew Beam battled through some early offense for South Carolina. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 runs, just one of them earned. But the pitcher of the day was Mason Molina. Came out of the bullpen for Arkansas. And maybe, just maybe, if they find starting pitching options elsewhere, maybe they found something. I mean, he's a guy whose fastball was averaging about 90 through his starts, was up like around 95 in his relief outing. Swing and miss stuff. He went 9 up, 9 down with 3 hitless perfect innings pitched to close out that game. So maybe they found something here, or maybe it's just like, hey, this is what he needed to kind of get back to being himself, and now let's explore putting it back in the rotation. Either way, a fabulous performance. Arkansas doesn't win that game without that performance. So he is the pitcher of the day. Game of the day today, Florida and Georgia. CAGS versus TBA. If Georgia has announced a starter since the show has been going, I haven't seen it, but it was listed originally as a TBA. But CAGS on the mound for Florida. Obviously, CAGS can be a little hit and miss on, no pun intended, on the mound. But I would guess, given his leadership qualities, the fact that the team kind of rallies around him, the fact that he hits better when he pitches, for all those reasons, I don't think there's anybody that Florida would rather have on the mound with their season on the line, and that's the reality of it. Florida needs a win today to not be in really tough spot next week in Hoover. Big one in Athens today between Florida and Georgia. Flipping over to make sure I'm not Tucker Medlin says, given that Lamonis is 1-4 at the SEC tournament, I'd prefer to have a host wrapped up before making the drive to Hoover. Yeah, I get that. I understand where you're coming from there, Tucker, for sure. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra at d1baseball.com. We had so much to talk about today. I'm actually forgot that I totally whiffed on giving a shout out to our sponsors. That is Plains Coffee Company. They are a husband and wife team roasting coffee beans in the heart of SEC country. You get free shipping. You can use the code baseball at plainscoffee.com to get 10% off of your order. Beans are not roasted until you order them. So if you're a coffee fan or a tea fan, they have tea options as well. Go to plainscoffee.com, support the people who support us. No one was quicker or more excited to support what we're doing here with Weekend Waypoints than Plains Coffee Company. So support those folks if you're looking for some fresh coffee beans roasted in the heart of SEC country, shipped directly to your door as fresh as possible. All right, folks, enjoy the baseball today. I will be, Landon says hit the like button. Yes, hit the like button or whatever it is that you need to hit to let them know that you like this. I'm not the best at promoting that kind of stuff, but I appreciate Landon for suggesting it. I will have one more episode this weekend. We'll back to wrap everything up tomorrow morning here at Weekend Waypoints. Thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to y'all soon.